I call the Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, firstly may I say that I hope you had a good summer break. I hope it was relaxing. Mine was, thank you. Rode a horse, grew my vegetables, went to the Wairarapa and to the Hawke's Bay, Coromandel. Went up north last week, pretty relaxing up there. Had a launch of the Northland Economic Action Plan. We had a visit from the occasional visitor to Northland, the current MP, Mr Peters. And also had, it is fair to say, a reasonably well-reported experience with an unmanned aerial vehicle. and Mr Speaker, it was an interesting day indeed at Waitangi, and I've been thinking about that day on the odd occasion since, and I have been thinking about the protesters. And Mr Speaker, I've been thinking about them because they've had obviously a lot to say, and fair enough too, that's the nature of protest. But a lot of what they've had to say has been very interesting. Primarily they've accused this government of not opening up and giving information. Now, Mr Speaker, I think the TPP is very important. I think it is one of the political fault lines about whether we're going to be forward-looking as a country, embracing the opportunities that the world provides to us in an open, competitive environment which gives our exporters and farmers a chance to succeed, or a backward-looking, defensive position where the world's out to get us and we should just try and crunch down and hope the world goes away, which was some of the other opposition politicians promote. So, Mr Speaker, I'd like to devote a small amount of time this afternoon to making a few points about trade and the TPP. I'd like to make the point that trade access is hugely important for a small country like New Zealand. It's not just important, it is hugely important. Without fair and equal trade access, we can't sell as much of our goods, we get less for them, and that means less jobs and lower incomes. And Mr Speaker, in particular, it's about jobs in regional New Zealand, in our small farming communities, like those in the far north that I visited last week, who are rightly looking for opportunities for their young people to be employed. The people that know it's really hard selling meat into Japan with a 38.5% tariff over what the locals are able to sell it for. The people who are trying to sell kiwi fruit into TPP countries, or ice cream. And I heard the leader of the opposition poo-pooing the dairy benefits of the TPP today. Well, there is a small ice cream company on the Hauraki Plains which has been started by international investors, which is providing jobs to those people who would appreciate the opportunity to sell ice cream into the US and Japan. Mr Speaker, I'm told from the protests it's about investor-state dispute resolution. Well, Mr Speaker, that is hugely more likely to help New Zealand than hinder it. We already have an independent justice system that protects the legitimate activities of all sorts of companies, including large multinational ones, that if they feel wronged can go to court in this country. And nothing will change for us unless we start doing something like nationalising companies at, 5% of their value, and then we'd have other problems anyway. But the ISDS provides opportunities for New Zealand companies in countries where perhaps the court system is perhaps not quite as independent. Some people have been really loud in this debate but reject the whole concept of trade. Why would you listen to Jane Kelsey if you are actually interested in trade? Because give Jane her due, she hates trade agreements. She does not. She'd roll back China, she'd roll back Korea, she'd roll back Southeast Asia, any one of them. So why would you get advice from her? She's hardly like to provide advice that is reasonable and balanced, Mr Speaker. I would like to point out that without the China FTA, we would have been a quiet country after the GFC. A country that would be able to afford far fewer of the medicines that those protesters claim to be concerned about having access to. And then there are others who say they support free trade but not this deal. They try and say this one is worse, but yet they can't point to why it's worse. They keep talking about all sorts of things. It was negotiated by the same officials, including Tim Grosser, who used to be an official, that negotiated all the other deals. Has similar trade-offs, similar clauses, and it's just not good enough, apparently. Perhaps they're grumpy that their lot didn't sign the deal, I don't know. But that is a ridiculous way to approach the arrangement. And then there are those who say it sacrifices our sovereignty. I had an experience, as we know, with somebody who said that, well, not quite in those words, last week. How can that be so? We have the sovereign right to withdraw from any trade deal at any time. Any trade deal at any time. I understand with TPP, it's 6 months' notice, you're out. We never do. But why not? Because we'd have to give up the benefits as well as the costs. And every single government has said the benefits are worth having, and they haven't walked away. Then there are those who even say it's anti-democratic. Though the current government has been elected, I don't know, once, twice, 3 times on the TPP, and the elected parliament has to approve the legislation. That's democracy. I've got an idea. If it's about democracy, why don't the protesters persuade the guy that's trying to sound like he agrees with them to actually go to the country in 2017 with a commitment to pull out of the TPP, a commitment to leave the TPP. He should stop waffling around and wander out there and say, I'm with you, protesters, I agree with you, I'll pull New Zealand out of the TPP, and then we can have a further democratic test, Mr. Speaker, about the future of this legislation. The most important point I want to make today, Mr. Speaker, is the reason why this government is doing this. Because everyone on this side of the House cares about the future of this country. We wanted to provide good jobs for our people, security for our families, and a big enough national income that we can afford the best health care, the best education services and so on that my friend the toy thrower was worried about. It is our sincere belief that this agreement will help do this for this country. Otherwise, we would not be here. So, Mr. Speaker, I say to Andrew Little, at least the protesters, have the excuse that maybe they don't know all there is to know about the agreement. But if you have been in this House, if you have been in the debate, you should be prepared to stand up for your country. Now, he can stand up either way. He can stand up in favour or stand up against. But enough of this mealy-mouthed going out. He spent half his speech today, half his speech nearly, saying how much he hated the TPP. But on the radio this morning, he was saying he would support it and would not withdraw from it. Well, I say, if you really want to show any sort of leadership, then step up and say you'll pull out, sunshine, because your rhetoric does not match what you're actually doing, and you're playing politics with the future of New Zealanders. And his colleagues know it, Mr. Speaker, and it's not good enough. Mr. Speaker, this will be an important year for New Zealand. They all are, but this is an important one. In this year, this government, the John Key government, will focus on building the opportunities for New Zealand, growing the skills, growing the innovation, building our infrastructure, improving our natural resources allocation, attracting investment in this country, and most importantly, providing export access to our farmers, to our businesses, to be able to sell overseas, Mr. Speaker. That is crucially important. So for any naysayer on the other side who has a speechwriter trying to write up stories about this government having a vision, I say, look in the mirror. It is you that are playing politics and have no vision for this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.